All right, we're back. This is Black Thought. I'm your host, Dr. Hutchinson. As you can see, we have with us Pastor Ralph White from the Bloomfield Baptist Church, and who is an integral part of the attempt to save Carver High School. Now, let's say this on the front end. We said it before. These schools are proposed to be closed. They are not closed as of yet. The verdict is still very much out. And of course, you can call us here at 527-2414 if you want to get into this dialogue. Pastor White, share with us the proposal that you submitted to the interim superintendent.
Okay, let me do this. Let me say this first.
Okay.
I'm glad you mentioned, and we want to continue to hit that this is only a proposal, and there are those who are saying that it's a done deal. Now, I believe this is because they have other interests. They're conflicting interests by some of the people who supposedly represent our community, and because many of us have a lot of confidence in the works that this individual has done, you know, they listen to it and they take it as Bible. But it's not the truth. We had a talk with the superintendent yesterday, and we shared this with him. He said, no, it's not a done deal. There will be other meetings.
Yeah, and let me interrupt you real quick for this purpose. Anytime, and you can track this and research it, anytime there are proposed closings of schools, the schools are never closed until they have community meetings that are held by school board commissioners. Not one community meeting has been held concerning these schools yet. The only meetings that you've had are concerned persons in the community that are mobilizing against the schools being closed. So be clear. The steps are, we propose the schools to be closed. Second step is, we have, the school board has community meetings where you have administrators and school board members present. The third and final step is that it comes back to the board and they vote as to which schools are to be closed. So we're only at step one in a three-step phase.
Right.
And his role is, and the roles of the persons that are with this movement are trying to set an alternative for the school board so it can be taken off that list.
Yeah.
Go right ahead.
Appreciate it. And it's quite lengthy, quite detailed. We'll just kind of give you kind of a nutshell what it is. We made two proposals, gave them some options. One was we looked at the boundaries. We said, let's expand the boundaries. We expand the boundaries and have it mandatory that the young people who are assigned to those areas actually attend Carver. Because the superintendent mentioned, he said there are many young people who are assigned to Carver who are not attending Carver High School. So you have the numbers. The young people are just opting not to go to Carver High School based upon parents falsifying, you know, information, etc. So if they did their due diligence, then the kids would be there. Also, let's expand the boundaries in the schools, in that area, back to where they were, not necessarily where they were, just over to Lauderdale. And if we would just deal with those young people, there would be enough children in that area to fill Carver, the elementary schools, Riverview, Florida, Kansas schools. So all of those, we would have enough children to actually do that. So and there's some other things that go in that. Also, as an alternative, we said, let's do this. Let's look at the option of going to take Riverview Middle School, which is just a few blocks away, and combine Carver High School and the students with Riverview Middle School into one junior high school, having junior high on one floor, the high school on another floor. That school would accommodate that. So that becomes one solution. Then let's look at what we would do as related to combining the Riverview Elementary and the Florida Kansas School, because we understand that there are many offices, they have facilitating different community services in the Florida Kansas School, which is just to the north of my church. Well, they don't have to close that school. They can just use that and bring some other offices there to serve that community. And those young people, combine them and bring both of those schools into the middle school, which at one time was Riverview Middle. So you could have these two schools, they would have an auditorium, they would have a gymnasium, they would have a large enough cafeteria to accommodate both those schools. So there are some options there that would actually save money, the money that would be involved in busing these children from Riverview to wherever it is they're going to go, from Riverview to Kansas and from Carver to Hamilton and all that. There are thousands of dollars that involved even just in transportation.
Exactly.
So there's so many, so many different scenarios there, so many different things that are involved in that package that we presented to the superintendent. He looked at it, and it addressed every issue, from the financial issue, having the numbers there, and so all of these have been addressed. But what happened with them when they made their decisions to close, none of these issues had been addressed. And I think by design, the school's boundaries were closed in so that at some point in time, we'd get to where we are now. They have no extracurricular. There's no choir. There's no band. There's none of that. So what we've done also, when they do their part, we've put together groups, and you were in one of our meetings, who said, what we're going to do, we're going to make sure that we will help to fund the choir, to fund the band. And we've got so many talented people out there who are serving in the city, who are gifted business people, entertainers, etc., who are willing to come in and actually have fundraisers to do what needs to be done to assist the board in taking care of these children with these other activities, uniforms, etc. So we had a complete package that we presented to him. As I said, we're talking 4, 5, 6 pages that were very detailed, and we presented that to the superintendent. He's going to present it to the board, let them look at it, and hopefully in the near future, we'll be meeting with them after they've critiqued it, and then hopefully we'll have a decision on what steps are next as it relates to the school.
And I pray so, because let's say this. First of all, there is precedent for much of what you just heard. I have to verify this, but it's been told to me that the reason why Hillcrest High School is still open is that they did the very same thing in terms of putting some middle school classes, grades, into the school. So I think that school runs from 7 to 12, just like the proposal that you have for Carver. The other thing is borders played with all the time when you talk about feeder patterns, because really this is what you're talking about. You have to understand, when you close a school, and I broached this subject here earlier this week, when you close a school, you start to affect feeder patterns. When you affect feeder patterns, you make yourself ripe for takeover, for, playing with boundaries, for doing different things. It's not a mistake or an accident that with some of the ASD appointments that they've put classes, they put grades rather, in Memphis City schools. They didn't take over the school, they put grades in the school. That's because you're dealing with feeder patterns. So for example, Fraser, much of Fraser is in the ASD district right now. And Chris Barbick will be back with us starting in July. And he'll be able to open up some of this conversation around the whole feeder pattern and how that works. And he's been frank and open and sometimes real blunt about what's going on. And I want to say I appreciate him for that. Because he also knows that when he comes here, we give him an opportunity not only to explain himself, and maybe that's a bad way to say that, but also an opportunity for you to have conversation with him. So you got to understand, all of this comes into play when you start looking at this. And then when you talk about boundaries, you also, and feeder patterns, you also talk about money. There's ADA requirements. You have to have a certain amount of students to have certain amenities. So now, when you choke off the amount of students that you have in the school, then of course you don't have a band, you don't have this, you don't have that. And so that affects the quality of schools.
That's actually what has happened.
Yeah.
And when they come back, or if they come back and say, well, we don't want to really combine middle school with high, that presents a problem, there's no problem when they can bring in a charter school and put it into a school. So if you can integrate those, then why can't you integrate, the two age difference of school, classifications? So it's workable. They've just got to be willing to work with it. And we're going to push that issue. And just as you said, these schools have been systematically choked out. Mm-hmm. The life has been gradually choked out of them, gradually choked out of the communities, and we've recognized what has been happening. There are boundaries. As a matter of fact, where my church is on South Parkway, Florida-Kansas School is just across the street. And there was a move to actually make that Parkway a boundary. Young people who lived on the south side could not attend Florida-Kansas School when they were just in stone's throw distance because that school was taboo to them. So what you're doing, you establish those boundaries. So now what you're doing, they had to attend Riverview Elementary School. Now, if you establish those boundaries, you can't attend Florida, Kansas, but now they're getting ready to close the elementary school that you're supposedly be able to attend. So where do you go? You have to go to A.B. Hill or one of these other schools totally out of the community. So those are the kinds of issues that we're dealing with over there.
And then when you add the cost of doing that, for example, when I was in the meetings about George Avenue School, I think this is the right figure, it costs roughly $500,000 to bus the students that were in Georgia Avenue School to LaRose, because if you remember that neighborhood, you cannot have those children crossing Danny Thomas, and you cannot have them crossing Crump. You just can't. It's not that far, but you wouldn't want your elementary school-age child crossing those major streets.
Right.
You barely want them crossing Mississippi Boulevard, and there's not that much traffic, but because it's a wide thoroughfare, it gives you pause. So now, Danny Thomas, well-traveled, Crump, well-traveled. So now you're spending $500,000 to bus kids 4 blocks. That's right.
And money's the issue.
Yeah.
And what we found out, too, this is one of the things startling. After we start crunching the numbers with the superintendent, we found that the numbers were nothing like those that had been presented to us by the representative from that community. Mm-hmm. She said, the school needs money, we don't have it, so we've got to close Carver High School. And when we started looking at the numbers, it's a comparison of busing these young people and all those other things, money was not even a real issue.
But you know what this sounds like to me, and I may be going, as we say, from preaching to meddling. You know what this sounds like to me? It sounds like to me they're trying to push the tag of all of this forward. The reason I say that, at some point when you empty out these buildings, you're not going to be able to give all these buildings to charter schools. That's the first thing. Second thing is when they lay empty, at some point somebody's going to have to address these buildings. That's the second thing. The third thing is you're going to have to at some point build new school buildings. When you repopulate areas, regardless of who's there, you're going to have to rebuild new school buildings. So you're kind of kicking the can down the street. And now here's where the meddling part comes in. Right now, we just heard of a letter going to Mayor A.C. Wharton about the fact that the city has to address certain fiscal issues. City Council just heard about it. And basically what the state said is the city been kicking the can down the street for 19 years. So now is this the setup for the can on the educational side to be kicked down the street? And is somebody going to pay for this when we get 19, 20 years down the road, when we've closed all these schools and we have these problems of overcrowding educating our kids, and basically they just become places where if you're not in a charter school, in a private school, they just do behavior control for the day, and education doesn't take place. So these are some questions that we have to start asking. And excuse me for being a cynic, but when you start seeing certain things and you start thinking, it makes you ask some questions.
Yeah, and that's what we're looking at. When we look at these schools, I've attended a few graduations, and I sit there and I see. I think there was one out east. I went to that graduation, and I saw those people, their chest out, and the schools and whatever their perception of education and all that is. Then I go back to where we are, and I see young people who feel that there are individuals out there who really have our best interests at heart, and they're trying to secure our future, and we're fighting over it. And there are many individuals who really don't care whether they get educated or not, and I have real problems with that. And we go back to us who are in the clergy and our concern. I mean, there is a real concern because, like, the city is going to suffer some things based upon their kicking the can down the street. We, as a faith-based community, there's going to be a backlash as a result of our irresponsibility when it has come to social issues. We see it now in the political arena. We see the apathy because they feel that many of these people don't care. And mark my word, that same kind of apathy is going to be felt in the church.
It's being felt now because I think that a lot of times for those in the community, they don't see us doing what Jesus did in Luke 15, where the question was raised, your master eats with publicans and sinners. In other words, he's down there on the corner with Pogo and Nuck Nuck, and they're rolling dice, and they got the paper bag rolled up, and they're sipping out of it. They're doing all kind of things. And instead of seeing him up at the church office sitting down and being respectable, he's down there kicking it with them. And so Jesus' response was, the 99 that are up the street at the church house, they're okay, but we got to get this one that's right out here and bring him in the fold. See? Yeah. And I think, here's what I said the other day on this show. There are some who feel that we just need to concentrate on heaven in their theology. There's some that feel we need to concentrate on individual prosperity. But really, when you look at what the Bible teaches, the Bible deals with heaven, the Bible deals with individual prosperity, but the Bible deals with corporate responsibility. We have to have a responsibility for those around us. Notice what Jesus paints when we get to Matthew 25. When we get to that great judgment, Jesus says, come in. Because when I was hungry, you did what? You fed me. When I was naked, you clothed me. And when I was in prison, now, prison. In other words, I was in a place where I may have messed up and others forsook me. You came and you saw me. And think about how Jesus was crucified. He was crucified. Crucifixion was the capital punishment of its day. So that meant you were said to have a bad reputation if you were crucified. It wasn't something that your folks bragged about. But the Lord took that symbol of shame and turned it around to a symbol of grace. So I know I'm starting to preach a little bit. But all of this fits. When you think about Scripture and all the scriptures that you can use that show us that we need to have a concern for our community, there are multiplicity of Scripture.
And you're so right. And I've shared with some brothers, and I guess I do some things because I just grew up doing some of what I do. And I shared with some brothers, and I was saying earlier, well, that's not my call. I said, but okay, now we're called to get out there. When I look at the gospel, never is it some come here. always something go tell. And, you know, it's something that we go deal with, and we find, you want to answer that, brother?
No, this is a good call.
Okay.
Good morning. This is Black Thought. You're on the air. Go right ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Hudson and McKinney of Tennessee State alumni. How y'all doing?
Doing well. Good to hear your voice.
Yes, sir. How you doing, with Pastor White, you say?
Yes.
Yeah,
How you doing, sir?
I just thinking about, pretty much everything we do, you can look in the Bible, and it's something that can, refer to that particular problem. But you said something about Dr. Hudson that anyway, in the book of Proverbs, I like that book. For lack of wisdom, my people are what?
Well, people perish for a lack of knowledge.
Absolutely. Wisdom or knowledge, which one? But then again, I'm thinking in terms of, have you ever played chess, any of you guys?
I played at it.
That's my
I'm
testimony.
just saying that I got a little anecdote, I played a little chess, and then old black man played checkers on the shade tree, right? But
Okay.
but if you know chess, you make a move with your pawn and then your bishop and all this, you'll never know. Next thing you know, your king and queen is checked. So I'm just thinking there's a possibility that in the theme of things that what I'm trying to say. The educational system here in predominantly black, you always said 71%.
Mm-hmm.
And think in terms of the distribution center out there, probably is not a great incentive for blacks to get educated anyway. So if they don't finish high school, like you said, even working at McDonald's, you said the other morning, you probably have to have a GED to get that job.
That's right.
So it's a great distribution center, and probably they say, well, they don't necessarily need to be educated, but they can load these trucks and these planes. So at the plantation, you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, they expand a little bit on that. I'm trying to think about how, like some stations they got on, and I won't call it stations, dumb down our people. That's what I'm trying to say.
I'm with you.
Take care.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
I'm going to let you jump on that.
Yeah, that's good. All of this is a part of where we are as we look at it. I deal with a group of my young people 2 Sunday mornings out of the year, out of the month, in the Sunday school class. The pastor has a time with them, and we talk to them about something similar to that. There was young, and I deal with them I can deal with pre-K to college students. So how do you deal with that? You give them all one test. I said, let's focus here. Everybody, from the young kid who's in pre-K to the young man who's in college. I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? I said, let's focus on that. See, many times we're distracted, especially our young people, because we have no goal, we have no focus. And I may have used an illustration about the 2 men laying bricks.
Mm-hmm.
I said, one little boy asked, sir, what are you doing? He says, I'm laying bricks. And he asked the other one, what are you doing? He says, I'm building a cathedral. Mm-hmm. They were about the same task, mm-hmm. but one was just doing what he had to do. Our young kids have been indoctrinated, go to school, because I had a sophomore in the group. He's home for the summer. I said, now what are you doing? He said, I want to be an entrepreneur. I said, wait a minute, that's too general. What do you want to do? He said, well, I want to start being, maybe 1 or 2 businesses. I said, that's too general. What do you want to do specifically when you leave? You graduate from college and you still got in your mind, I want to be an entrepreneur. I mean, there are a plethora of different things you can do. And do you know that you're going to be challenged? There's going to be competition for what it is, and you wasted 4 years in college, 12 years in high school, and you're coming out saying, I want to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to get an entrepreneur diploma. And you need to get direction. I asked a boy who was 5 years old, I said, what do you want to be? You need to start right now so that every day in school becomes a time that you're laying bricks for what it is you want to do. And so our young people have to get focused. When we're focused on some things, we're not going to be distracted by a lot of what the world is throwing at them.
Yeah.
All the profanity, all the vulgarity, all the crazy music, because they're focused. And we've got to do this. And you can teach that to our young people, especially that 5-year-old. The formative years are from what? Conception to 5 years old. We set core values with our children. But we wait until they're in high school to tell them to start thinking about what they want to be.
Set it early.
So, so back to what he was saying is, if we let the system do it, our young people are being groomed for the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
By year 2020, the criminal justice system budget, I mentioned to you, is going to be the same as the national defense budget.
And that's scary.
And this is where we're headed.
And they set those jail, those
Prison from third grade to seventh grade.
Yeah, they start at around the third grade. Yeah. They set the amount of prison cells they're going to build from third grade schools.
Yeah, so that's a whole nother show.
Yeah, that's another show.
Because, so this is why we are very concerned, because when I go into the community to talk to young men and young women to change their lives, we got to make sure that when I bring them into the church, that I don't just have Jesus to serve them. I serve them Jesus. Then Jesus, when he preached to people, after a while, he heard their stomachs growling. He said, okay, that's enough of that.
We at the field.
They got to eat.
That's right.
So we've got to be, there has to be a holistic approach, what you mentioned early on. We got to be concerned with the spiritual, then we got to be concerned with what happens to them in their physical bodies, and how they're going to work, and how they're going to be educated, and all those things.
It's going to be good. Good morning, this is Black Thought. You're on the air.
Y'all know y'all from Pimpin'.
But do you have anything credible to say? Do you have anything credible to... Okay. We got the ignorant crew calling up. Good morning, this is Black Thought. You're on the air. Hello? Okay. Good morning, this is Black Thought. You're on the air. Hello? Oh. Good morning, this is Black Thought. You're on the air. Okay, well.
And that's sad. I mean, ignorance is bliss. And I mean, whatever the personal agenda, when you're talking about an issue as serious as dealing with the livelihoods of our children, and somebody still feels that they have time to play personal games, to sell up personal debts, or deal with personal agendas, when the future of our children's at stake, they need to be spending that time at those board meetings, dealing with the schools, and trying to stand up for our children. It's sad.
There's somebody right now, and they're part of this crew, and I have my suspicions as to who they are, who's at home giggling. Look at what I did. Look at what I said. But now, in the grand scheme of things, what did you really do? You didn't say anything of note. You got hung up on. You're not disrupting the flow of the show, because we keep going. Matter of fact, we don't need that type of distraction even to get people to watch the show, because that's not what we're about. So what did you really do other than be disruptive against your people? If you don't agree with what we're saying and what we're doing, say that. But don't act ignorant. And ignorance is a curable disease. You don't have to stay ignorant. It just means that you don't know. And that's fixable. But you have to want for it to be fixed. So it's just sad when you do that. Now, just be clear. If you keep calling here, I'm just going to hang up. Now, I was a little more lenient today than I normally am, because when I see a private number or when I see certain numbers, I just already know to hang up. So just be clear. You're not really doing anything. So now you got your 5 seconds of attention, which is what you really wanted. And when we have the shows on mental health here on the station on Tuesdays, maybe you ought to watch those shows. It may help you a little bit. I'm through with that. But anyway, let's get back to what we were talking about. It's sad when you got to hold a class for folk like that when we trying to talk about something serious. But now, dealing with these issues, here's the bottom line in all of what we said. If you want to work in the warehouse, that's cool. If you don't want to work in the warehouse, that's cool. But every person ought to have options, and they ought to be able to maximize who they are to the top of their potential. And that's what we're talking about. If this is a transportation hub and we have a lot of warehouses and things go out, can't we be a hub of something else? They can run side by side. If you look at some of the greatest cities of the world, they don't major in one thing. They major in 7 or 8 different things. And so if you don't do this, you have the choice to do that. If you don't do that, then you have the choice to do something else. But here sometimes it seems like we want to box ourselves into majoring in 1 or 2 things. And the world is too broad for that.
Yeah.
And that's what we're saying. And education gives you the opportunity to major in whatever you want. Now, we're at past time. We're going to have to leave it there. But let me give you the last word. Are there any other things that you need to say about this movement? Any other meetings? Let us know right now.
Well, there are some meetings planned. We don't have the dates. As I said, we just came out of the meeting with the superintendent, but if there are those who'd like to get involved, they can call me personally, or they can call the church. I'm going to give them the church numbers. Bloomfield Baptist Church, area code 901-948-3078.
Repeat that number again.
901-948-3078.
One more time for the Holy Ghost.
901-948-3078. That's Bloomfield Church. We can put you on our list, and all the upcoming meetings, we're establishing a website so that we can, you can touch in, see what's going on, see when the future meetings are. But we want to be consistent in what we're doing. And as I shared, one of the things that we are in efforts like this, historically, we've been consistently inconsistent. But we want to change that, get a new direction, and we can make a change in the city, and we can fight and keep our communities and schools open.
I want to thank you for that. That's why we had him on this show. You've heard the number, and as the links come available, we'll let you know what they are. And as the meetings come available, even with what he has said, we'll let you know when they are, because we're about trying to do some things for the good of our community. It's time for us to go. And as I always say, brother man, sister woman, young boy, young girl, put your mind in gear, and guess what? Put your thinking cap on. Peace.